Good evening, everyone. If I can welcome you to the Planning, Regulatory and Licence Committee of Wednesday the 9th of December, and I'll hand you over to Geraint Morgan, who will read out the words as necessary.
Okay. If I could remind everyone that the committee meeting will be recorded and subsequently broadcast on the authority's website. Public seating areas are in view of the camera, and by entering the chamber and using the public seating areas, members of the public are consenting to being filmed. Please could committee members ensure that their mobile phones are switched off as they interfere with the recording. Use your microphones at all times when you're speaking. However, during the meeting, if any member has any questions or comments, please indicate to the chair by a raise of hands. Please do not activate your microphone until you have been called by the chair to speak, and ensure that you turn your microphone off when you have finished. Also, could you ensure you use your microphone when a recommendation is moved and seconded.
Thank you. If we now go to the agenda, any apologies for absence? You had no apologies?
No, Chair.
Any apologies for absence? Oh, I got one, I know. Councillor Gareth Lewis, he did tell me. Any other apologies? No? If not, we go to item 2, any declarations of interest? We have none. We now go to the open session and the planning applications. And that's item 3, and that's P/15/0312. It's land at the former council depot, New Road, Dowlas, Merthyr, Tydfil, and that's to consider report of the corporate director, place and transformation. And David Cross is going to take.
Thanks, Chairman. Okay, so this application relates to an area of land measuring approximately 1.5 hectares and was previously used as the council's highway and waste cleansing depot. The site adjoins the Civic amenity recycling facility, which is to the west of the site, and to the north is the St Illtyd's primary school. Planning permission is being sought for the change of use of the site to a transport depot. The proposal will involve the construction of a new industrial unit, which will be used for as a garage to maintain the buses on site. There will be a new office building located near the entrance to the site at the northern end, and a canopy would be constructed on the side of an existing unit at the southern end of the site. The proposal also includes various hard standing areas and retaining works within the site. I should point out that the site is, as you may be aware, is currently being used as a transport depot as we speak, and there are a number of buses and cars parked on the site as part of that operation. The foundations for the new industrial unit have already been constructed, and a lot of the retaining works have already been carried out. So this application is in part a retrospective application. You may recall as well that this scheme was presented to the committee back in June, and at that time it was recommended, and subsequently the application was refused on the grounds that there was insufficient information to enable an informed assessment of the potential highway and pedestrian safety implications. The details of the scheme in this application are identical to that previously submitted. However, the applicant has now submitted a highway safety audit in support of the proposal to overcome the previous reason for refusal. As a result of the consultation exercise, we've had no objections received from either the internal or external consultees, including the highway and engineering manager. However, we have received one letter of objection from a resident which raised two main issues. One was that they had concerns that the buses using the existing access, concerns with the buses using the existing access adjacent to the school itself, and they were concerned that there's been some conflict with buses trying to get into and out from the depot during peak school times when children are being picked up or dropped off. The merits of the application have been set out in the planning consideration section of the report on pages 5 to 8. And in summary, the principle of development is considered to be acceptable. The general design, the siting of the industrial unit in the offices and the canopy are also considered to be acceptable. The main reason the last application was refused because of highway grounds. In this instance, the report that was put forward suggests that the highway safety implications of the development have been reasonably assessed and that the development would not have an adverse impact. In this respect, it should be noted that the highway and engineering manager has requested a number of conditions to try and minimise any impacts, and that relates to restricting the hours in which buses can come in and out of the site to avoid the peak times for the pickup during term times, and also that within the next 12 months they would need to also carry out a further highway safety audit, stage 3 and 4 audit, which looks at it's basically a monitoring exercise to look at if there's been any complications, is the junctions, is a need for any more signs and things like that to, to inform drivers, and as such any recommendations of that would then be subsequently implemented. Therefore, it's recommended this application is approved subject to those conditions plus the others set out on pages 8 to 9.
Thank you, David. Any questions? Any members? Yes, Councillor Williams.
Thank you, Chair. I'm on page 6, and you suggested, David, that there was already a problem with buses trying to use the depot at school drop-off peak times, So I know this is not a guarantee because it says they would generally seek to avoid these busy times, but what impact do you think this will have on St Illtyd's School?
Well, in terms of the highway safety audit they've carried out so far, they haven't highlighted any particular issue with the traffic associated with the other uses in that vicinity. They've mainly highlighted the need to monitor the adequacy of the junction onto the main road, which has already been used by large vehicles and in relation to the civic amenity site, and you would have had similar large vehicles on the in the former depot site as well. So there isn't suggested in the report to be any particular issues, but the highways were obviously concerned that obviously the vulnerability of children running out into the area, needs to be monitored, and there is some risk, I suppose, that there could be congestion. Which is why it was felt it was necessary to try and minimise that as best as possible with the use of those conditions.
Before I bring in Councillor Chaplin, because it's on the same point, on page 4, and you have referred to it, David, that the objector, and I quote, says there have been conflicts with the buses trying to gain access into the site during the peak school pickup time. And one of the conditions is condition 5 on page 9, and I quote, it said, during school term times, no buses or coaches or lorries shall enter or exit the site between the hours of 8:45 to 9:30 and 14:45 to 15:30. So the site is operational at the moment, isn't it? We've got no evidence, have we, that there are problems, and the 8:45 time, I presume the school starts at 9 o'clock. Is that an adequate time? Because some parents take their children to school perhaps even earlier than the quarter hour beforehand.
Yeah, I spoke to the highway manager on that to make sure that the times were acceptable, and he's spoken to the school and confirmed the sort of general pickup times and drop-off times, so they should fall within, there may be some people that arrive to the site slightly earlier, but the traffic levels at that time would be quite small anyway, so this is the main peak times really. So and I should point out as well that we haven't had an objection from the school either in this respect.
No. Yeah. So as far as the objector is concerned, to date there's been no evidence of, and I quote, conflict with buses trying to gain access.
No, as far as I'm aware, well, certainly to us, we haven't had any reports of any particular issues, and the Highway Department haven't been made aware of any issues.
Thank you for that. Councillor Chaplin.
Thank you, Chair. In relation to the conditions, how do you record that conditions have been met? Do you keep a written record that the conditions have been met, and who would be responsible for maintaining such a record?
We don't keep a record of whether conditions are being met, but obviously if there is a particular issue being created and or it's established that there is a breach of that condition, then we can obviously take appropriate enforcement action then.
I noticed that on these conditions, number 2, 3, 6 and 7, there's times when these conditions have to be met. So I'm a little aghast that there's no written record of when the conditions are met, because we've had problems with conditions not being met until sites have been completed in the past.
I believe the operational use of the site is currently being reviewed through enforcement as we speak now. So if the committee are minded to approve this application, we would report back to them and let them know that it's now got permission, so that we can then follow up on those time limits, the 2 months period, to make sure that those details come forward. Obviously an application to discharge those conditions then would be a formal submission, and that would be on the file then as part of the record.
Any other questions from members? Any more questions? Yeah, go.
Do we know whether fuel is going to be stored on the site?
I believe it would be in one of the existing, one of the new industrial units, but at the moment they haven't given specifications on that. But that would be something that could be regulated through environmental health.
Any other questions from members? No? Any comments from members? If there are no comments, is there a member prepared to move this recommendation?
Yes, Chair, I'll move the recommendation, but the extra condition will go down what the officer just spoke. After all within the 3 or 4 months that they got that fed back to us, that everybody's happy with the conditions that's in place, because we got the recommendation everything on number 2 within 2 months of the date for this permission. So can we have a bit of a feedback in if everything's working tidy?
Yeah, committee might not be aware that as of October this year, we haven't formalised discharging conditions now, so they all come in as applications. So that is a formal process for us to record those. By all means, we can let you know when those are in, but it wouldn't be officially reported to committee, but we can keep you advised of when that information is submitted.
It's been moved. Is there a seconder to the recommendation? That's it. Barrett?
Yes, Chair, I'll second the motion.
Thank you. Can you all now vote, please? That's carried, and that's been approved. The next item is item 4, next planning applications P/15/0324, and that's land at Walters Terrace, Aberfan, Merthyr, Tydfil, and that's to consider report of the Corporate Director, Place and Transformation, pages 11 to 24, and Hugh is going to take us through this report.
Yep, thank you, Chairman. Yeah, this is an application for residential development comprising a mix of 6 flats and 17 houses. All the properties would be affordable housing units for use by Merthyr Tydfil Housing Association. There have been no objections as a result of the consultation exercise undertaken. As a result of the publicity exercise undertaken, 1 letter of objection has been received. The main planning objections raised relate to the increased pressure on local schools and the increased traffic on Aberfan Road and Aberfan Crescent. This application site is located within settlement limits as defined for the local development plan. As such, the principal residential development is considered acceptable by the policies of the LDP. The layout of the site and the design of the houses, flats are sympathetic to the surrounding area and would therefore not harm the character or appearance of this part of Aberfan. As members will note, the Highways and Engineering Manager has not raised any objection to the proposal in terms of off-street parking, the internal layout of the site, or any impact on surrounding roads in terms of highway or pedestrian safety. The Education Department has also confirmed that there's sufficient surplus spaces in local schools to accommodate additional pupils as a result of this development. The application is therefore recommended for approval subject to the conditions highlighted on page 20 to 24 of the report. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Any questions from members? Yes, Councillor Chaplin.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, this seems to be a very difficult site to develop. And I noticed that you've got block A, B, C, D, E, F and G. I'm concerned at the number of conditions that applying to this, and I wonder, have we got adequate staff to carry out monitoring and possible enforcement of the conditions?
Yep, the conditions may seem a lot, and it is a difficult site to develop. Without a shadow of doubt, there's a steep embankment that goes up to the Taft Trail. Although the majority the site will be developed on the flat areas at the bottom of that embankment. There is a lot of conditions on there, but I think it's not unusual amount of conditions for a site of this nature. There's also a couple of belt and braces conditions, if you like. So we've got some of the information with regard to those conditions, but we need additional information with regard to those conditions as well. I think the developer's already been in contact with us regarding a number of those conditions as well. So and given who the application is for as well, and the funding that's for those for those types of houses going forward, they will need to discharge the condition to get any funding for the houses as well. So there's another belt and braces to ensure those conditions are discharged. So there isn't going to be any issue with discharging the conditions. So I'm fairly comfortable we've got the resources to do so.
Is this a windfall site? In other words, was it identified during the local plan review that this site was allocated for housing, or was it just white land?
Yeah, it's within the settlement boundary, it's not allocated, so it is a windfall site, yes.
Okay. Any other questions, members? Councillor Barrett?
Thank you, Chair. This site is what we had a site meeting a couple of years ago. Is this the one? Yes, we did. A couple of years ago? No, oh, sorry, wrong one. Oh. Yeah, it was on my days,
No, that was in Kingsley Terrace, which is near Waters Terrace, isn't it? Yeah, it's to the northwest. Yeah. Okay. Any other questions from members? No? Any comments? Yes, Councillor Mansbridge.
Just to allay Councillor Chaplin's fears, first of all, the site itself, I think, was in the BD, was in the local planning development, was it?
It's not an allocated site, but it does fall within the settlement boundary of the LDP.
Well, this land has become available, and it's going to help to alleviate the moving of people from Taft and Crescent Street. It's a start. We have moved 25 families from these two streets, and we've seen this now as a good a good chance to move further people from them two streets that are prone to flooding. All right, we are going to have a large number of houses built on the colliery, but that's going to be in a few years' time. That's in the future. Pressure on the schools and the surgeries, as the report said. The schools and the surgery will cope, and in fact, as far as the surgery is concerned, we're hoping that the local health board will come forward and do a primary healthcare centre, either on the colliery site or on the old Nixon House site. But again, that's in the future. It is. The access onto the site itself is straightforward. It's just off a road, which is a bus route. It is. And now we've got the new bridge and the new road open in going through the old colliery site. That's taken a lot of congestion off of the centre of Aberfan. It has. So I fully support this this application.
Thank you, Councillor Mansbridge. Yes, Councillor Smith.
But again, yeah, I support this because there's a need for social housing. Now, it's immaterial what people say. There's a need for social housing down the valley, and that's the only way we're going to improve and keep people there, because we're struggling. The way the cost of housing are rising, people's wages, but there's a need for social housing, and that's the way I'm looking at it.
Do you have any other comments from members? Councillor Williams.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. I can't see schools seeing this as a problem. I'm sure they would welcome it with, falling roles. They might welcome the extra pupils.
Well, as it says in the report, they have spare capacity there, and I would have thought there's no problem as far as the additional numbers for the GP surgeries around there as currently. Any other comments? No? Could I ask for a member to move the...
I have great pleasure in moving this application.
Thank you. As a seconder?
I'll second the motion. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Can you all please vote now? Councillor Barnesbridge, I thought you were fully in favour of this one. Right, that's been approved and carried, thank you. Back to the agenda, item 5, you see there the appeal decision, P/15/0091. That is, again, for information. Item 6 is the normal delegated decision report list from the 1st of November to the 30th of November. Again, that's for information. And just before I go to any other business, can I wish everyone a happy Christmas and a healthy new year? And can I thank all the staff who are here in the planning committee throughout the year, and all the members as well. And item 7, any other business as deemed urgent by the chair, I have none. I declare the meeting closed.